Thomas Paine, the corset maker who shook the world. Thomas Paine played a crucial, irreplaceable role in the founding of our great nation. He managed to inspire a nation of loyalists to the crown to start thinking about independence. He was, in fact, a founding father. Not one of the key founding fathers that come to mind, like Benjamin Franklin, John Adams, or Thomas Jefferson. Yet Thomas Paine's contributions to the founding of the United States of America are no less significant. Thomas Paine took a stand in history by introducing a new way of thinking to all who were subject to the rule of monarchs with the use of his writing. Thomas Paine was born on January 29, 1736, in England, and at age 13, he was withdrawn from his education to work as an apprentice to his father as a corset maker. He aged into an adult and bounced from job to job, even started his own business. He married a woman named Mary Lambert, and once married, she was soon pregnant. Unfortunately for Thomas Paine, his wife, as well as his child, died at birth. This would plunge him into a deep state of depression, lasting for years to come. This would even force his business to close. Years later, as he continued bouncing from job to job, the man began his involvement in politics, asking that Parliament give better working conditions to government's workers. The attempt was futile. Parliament would easily disregard the voice of a common man, and this would spark a passion in Thomas Paine's heart. This passion would grow exponentially throughout his life. This was a passion for people's rights. This was a passion for people's voice. Soon, he would come to meet a man named Ben Franklin, who was impressed by the man's strong political beliefs, his passion for human rights, and he encouraged him to go to America. And so he did, with a letter of recommendation from Benjamin Franklin himself. Soon, arriving in Pennsylvania, he was able to get a job working for the Pennsylvania Magazine, which would begin his career as a political writer. Thomas Paine, as a writer now, would grow to hate the crown more and more. He despised the very idea that a man, a king, had the divine right to rule anything. At the time, even the founders of our country were pushing for changes in the British Constitution. Nothing close to a full-scale revolution. But Thomas Paine was always a very radical man. He had a very radical mindset. So, with his hatred of the crown, he soon produced the pamphlet known as Common Sense. When this pamphlet was published, it was immediately successful. Everyone in the colonies at the time would have read it. 120,000 copies were printed in Philadelphia, and at the time, for a book to have been mass-produced so consistently was ridiculous. This was by far one of the most successful books of all time in the colonies. And this book offered some of the most radical yet logical solutions to the problems facing the colonies. But those who were not swayed by his words grew to hate him. Many loyalists sought revenge, but Thomas Paine didn't publish it with his name at first. He didn't face a consequence for publishing such a treasonous piece of writing. Thomas Paine did what no other founding father could do at the time, and that was rally the support of practically everyone in the colonies. He brought this discussion, this idea of revolution, to the table. And Thomas Paine was a crucial part of the success of a revolution. Joanne Freeman, professor of American Studies at Yale.
Kind of a conversion experience, and there are people, there are fence sitters who might have had the makings of a radical, and in reading the pamphlet or hearing of the pamphlet, they actually were radicalized by it. It was talked of everywhere. As Rush put it, its effects were sudden and extensive upon the American mind. It was read by public men, it was repeated in clubs, spouted in schools, and in one instance, delivered from the pulpit instead of a sermon by a clergyman.
Fast forward a short while. Thomas Paine has joined the Continental Army, serving under George Washington himself. He would now transition from a writer to a politician through his service to the Continental Army. He would be sent as an emissary to France, where revolution blazed onward. Apparently, his writings and common sense had inspired many there as well. But, unfortunately, as he had very controversial views, he would be sent to prison, where he spent several years and would have produced another pamphlet called Rights of Man. Not nearly as impactful as Common Sense, but still a success nevertheless. Soon, when the colonies had him sent back, he would return to a more peaceful life where he would live out the rest of his days in the colonies. Unfortunately for Thomas Paine, he was a hated man. His identity was in fact eventually revealed, and instead of being hailed as a hero, like other founding fathers, he was a center of hate to all. Thomas Paine was a very controversial man. He was a strong advocate for everyone's rights. He fought for women's rights as well as ethnic rights, stating that with what consistency or decency can we complain so loudly of attempts by British to enslave us while we hold so many thousands of black people in slavery? Not only was his support of equal rights controversial, but his criticism of a religion brought quite a bit of hate to him and his name. He turned out to have given up most of his wealth to the Continental Army throughout his service to his country. So by the time he died a poor, hated old man. Only 6 people attended his funeral. And his name isn't even remembered by many. But Thomas Paine, he didn't care. His reputation meant hardly anything to him. He would never be suppressed by society, whether it be his stance on equal rights for women and blacks, or it be his hatred of monarchy. The man would not, under any circumstances, let society muffle his speech. So, to conclude, Thomas Paine took a stand in history without a doubt.